Adam Schuster. He's Director of Budget and Tax Research. Smart guy, knows a lot of stuff, and he's got information for you. Adam, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, and happy Independence Week.
And to you as well. I hope you have a terrific one. Let's be careful with those fireworks, Adam. You want to be back with all your fingers, come Monday.
Absolutely.
You don't want to seem like you're playing in the NFL anyway. You've got a piece out. Guest View. This is from the what paper is this from?
State Journal Register, probably.
State Journal Register. That's it. Commemorating the 1-year anniversary of Illinois' 2017 income tax hike. July 7th marks the 1-year anniversary after a historic 736-day budget impasse. Ended with a record-setting income tax hike. Who wouldn't remember that with a big smile on their face? How's that done for us, Adam?
Yeah, well, I think it's an anniversary that's not worth celebrating. So essentially what we've seen over the last year is that the private economy has about $5 billion less in it. As a $5 billion permanent income tax hike, record-setting income tax hike, took a little over $700 out of the average taxpayer's pocket. And it came along with all sorts of promises. This was supposed to help us balance our budgets. It was supposed to help us pay down our debts. It was going to improve our credit rating, and none of that happened. So in the first 2 years of the tax hike, we couldn't manage to balance the budget. We've got just as much debt as we did before, essentially, when you discount the bonds we used to pay off some of our bills. And all the credit rating agencies agree that this has done nothing to solve our long-term challenges.
Okay, so what you're saying is so then. This sounds awful, and especially when you tack on the part, all the major credit reporting agencies go, no, they're shaking their heads. This is a bad idea.
That's right, and I think we're gonna keep seeing them do that. I mean, so our credit rating was the lowest in the nation before the tax hike, just one notch above junk, and it's the lowest in the nation now, 1 year after the tax hike. And the reason for that is they didn't go after the core problem. They keep coming back to taxpayers to ask for more money, and they're not addressing their spending problem. So state spending has grown about 25% faster than residents' personal income, which makes it impossible for the private economy to pay for government with a constant rate of taxation. So instead of controlling their spending, going after the main cost drivers of the budget, building in some surpluses so we can pay down our debts, attacking the pension liability, they keep coming back to taxpayers and asking for more money. And, if the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, well, I'll let you judge whether lawmakers fit that definition.
I think we're all firmly on board with that one. You point out the so-called compromise budget for fiscal year 2019 relies on the $5 billion tax hike and a number of accounting gimmicks.
That's right, yeah. And so there's an article on IllinoisPolicy.org that goes through those gimmicks in great detail, but just a couple of them. They're selling the Thompson Center for the third year in a row. They're sweeping a bunch of money out of other state funds, which is like taking money out of your right pocket and putting it into your left. And they're just ignoring outright about $412 million in costs that they know they have to pay to AFSCME back wage increases. So that's the state employee union.
I read a piece not long ago, and I don't know who put it up, but it basically said Illinois' sickening habit of fund sweeping. Apparently in some other states you can't do that, but here you can.
Yeah, that's right. So it gets a little complicated, but there's the general revenue fund, which is usually what we talk about when we're talking about budgeting, and then there's about 600 other state funds, and those have dedicated purposes. So I'll just give you one example. There's a fund called the Mental Health Fund, and it's supposed to be funded through people who pay for mental health services, funded through fees. It's not supposed to receive tax dollars, and it's supposed to go towards improving mental health services in the state of Illinois. In 2018, lawmakers swept about $1.1 million out of that fund, which is actually very productive and has a very specific purpose, and they threw it into the black hole that is the Illinois General Fund's budget.
Okay, so yeah, you thought your money that you were spending on this sort of thing was supposed to go toward helping others, and no, it went to helping other politicians then.
Yeah, essentially, it went to propping up their overspending. So fund sweeps are just one example of how they get around curbing their spending, and it's the reason that we keep seeing them go back to tax hikes and borrowing. And the problem with this tax hike, other than the fact that it didn't do anything to solve our problems, is it actually slowed down our economy. It's if you look at the long-range average of growth in the U.S., it's stayed about the same. And in Illinois, since the 2017 tax hike, we've taken a big dip.
Oh, good to know. That makes people feel much better about things. And when you look around and go, hey, look at the rest of the country, then look at what we're doing, which might explain some of the outbound migration. We're spending time with Adam Schuster. He's Director of Budget and Tax Research for Illinois Policy, illinoispolicy.org, an outstandingly good website with, lots of things about Illinois that maybe you did not know. And one of the great things is they always offer up a solution to go along with the critique that comes down as well. So now we're told that this is gonna help us. We'll raise these taxes. Oh, I know it's going to be painful, but we're going to save the state and all that. And watch, other states will do what we're doing, except for the states around us have all lowered their income taxes.
That's right. So so people might not remember, or maybe they do because they're still feeling the pain. But back in 2011, they hiked taxes. They promised it was going to be temporary. They were going to use it to pay off debts, and then the tax rate was going to go back to what it was. And the tax rate went back to what it was. The temporary tax hike expired, and they said, no, actually, we really do need some more money, so we're just going to hike them again. And since 2011, when Illinois politicians started hiking taxes, every state around us has lowered their personal income taxes. And so it's really not hard to see why their economies are growing faster than ours and why they're able to outperform us and why we're one of only 2 states in the country that's seen 4 straight years of population loss. And, oh, by the way, the people we're losing are not mainly retirees. It's prime working-age adults, people who are trying to find careers and aren't finding that opportunity in Illinois, so they're looking outside.
Yeah, another piece on your site points this out. Census data revealed that in the wake of the Great Recession, our prime working age population has declined 5%, while the U.S. prime working age population has grown 1.4%. Over the time frame, weaker growth in every prime working age population cohort. The most severe divergence was in the ages of 25 to 29, which grew 1.5% nationally, but shrunk in Illinois. The outbound migration.
That's right. And so, just to bring it back to the tax hike, the problem is not only is it not solving the problems because it's skirting around the key spending problem, but the tax hike is making our long-run problems harder to solve because when you slow down the economy, when you drive people out, you have fewer taxpayers, you have lower natural revenue growth. If state revenues grow because the economy's booming, that's not such a bad thing. But if state revenues are only growing because you're, bleeding the turnip a little bit more and taking more money out of the people who are still here and still trying to make a life in Illinois, well, then that's a big problem.
Oh, yeah, and we're seeing it reflected every time that a magnifying glass is put to some of these things. Now, I mentioned Illinois policy, offers critiques on things that are going on, but you guys always offer up what I consider to be well-thought alternatives. And in the spring, you guys introduced a spending cap amendment that, well, I remember you and I talking about this, thinking this was a great way of going about things. Where'd that go?
Absolutely. Well, we got some great bipartisan support for it last session. It did not end up passing, but we're going to build on that momentum, and we're going to ask that going forward, lawmakers do 2 things. First, we want them to voluntarily adopt a spending cap as a budgetary principle, so that they don't spend any more than they would as if we had a spending cap. And the reason we need them to do that voluntarily to start with is because it's going to take a little while until we can get the spending cap passed, and then constitutional amendments have to go on the ballot. And so just to refresh what the spending cap is it ties the growth in state spending each year to a long-run average of growth in the economy. And essentially what that means is that taxpayers can't spend, or lawmakers can't spend more than taxpayers can afford. And the reason that's important is because they will keep coming back for tax hikes if we don't force them to show some fiscal constraint. If we don't, put them in handcuffs and limit how much money they can spend, they're going to keep going back to the well. And, because this current budget year is out of balance, the rating agencies have said they may need to return as soon as this fall to try to patch a hole in the budget. I think it's more likely that they'll try to do that after the election. So I would be looking out for talk of a potential tax hike as soon as this January. And on the anniversary of last year's failed tax hike, we need to make sure lawmakers know that another tax hike is absolutely off the table, and it's something that's never going to solve the state's problems.